There's never been a Neopets drama that has been as broad-reaching or as influential as the Neopets drama that occurred on March 12th, 2021. On the PC, a user posted claiming that they could unconvert any Neopet and then proved it. There are so many layers to that, and I understand if you understood like a word or two of what I just said, but I want to talk about what an unconverted Neopet is, a user being able to unconvert any Neopet, the PC chat, and the Neopets team's response to this claim and proof, and what that means for the future of Neopets. I'm going to be honest, I really struggled to make this video because I want to be factual, but there are articles that cover this story that in such detail that like I feel silly just restating the points of those articles. And so I've tried a couple of ways to tell this, and ultimately the solution that I came up with is that I'm going to tell it to you while I paint my nails, because it's been a long while since I've had some gossip and a friend to talk about that gossip with while I take care of my nails. So we got these stubby boys with chippy colors on them. So I'm gonna get to work making this video segment by segment as I paint my nails. Step 1, removing nail polish. Let's start with the fundamentals, because if you don't understand what a Neopets color is or how to change your Neopets color, you're not gonna get this story. First of all, a Neopet on neopets.com is a pet that is one of 55 different species. Back in 2007, there were 54 species of Neopets, and in 2021, there are 55 species of Neopets. Every Neopet, when you go through the Create a Neopet process, is available in all 4 of those colors: red, yellow, green, and blue. There are additional styles that you can make your Neopets. One of them is called Royal, and it makes your Neopet look like a member of royalty. This is called a color. So we've got standard colors like purple or yellow or pink, but then you also have something that you would think of as a style like royal or holiday or island, and those styles are also called colors. They fall into the same category of color. So your Neopet can either be purple colored or it can be island colored. You can make your Neopet these alternative colors with a paintbrush, or you can unlock an event on the site that randomly changes their color, or you can use an item called a morphing potion to change your Neopet into a different color. You can purchase a paintbrush, like a royal paintbrush, and then paint your Neopet royal. These paintbrushes are very expensive. To purchase them on site costs Neopoints. There are colors that can only be accessed through paintbrush or random event, and because they're rare, they are more valuable, are seen as more rare. Before 2007, Neopets went through a series of different illustrations for each species and for the different colors of that species. So you would have an Aisha, and that Aisha would have one set of line art for the standard colors, red, yellow, green, and blue. But when you had an alien Aisha, which is a color for Aisha, it would have a different line art and pose. Or a royal Aisha would have a different standard pose and color. It wouldn't fit the line art that a pink Aisha would have. In 2007, Neopets rolled out a feature called customization, and it rendered the Neopet into a dress-up doll that could receive clothing. You can dress up your Neopet using either items purchased on the website, neopets.com, using Neopoints, or you could purchase a paid currency called Neocash, and through Neocash, purchase clothing from the Neocash Mall to dress up your Neopet. When the Neopets team rolled out the feature of customization, they faced the challenge of having to draw the clothing for every species of Neopet, and then each unique pose associated with the different colors of Neopet. Like I mentioned before, a royal Aisha would have different line art than a red Aisha. The Neopets team decided to address this with the standardization of poses across all the line art for all the colors, with the exclusion of 2 colors, baby and Moroccan. And those are just because Moroccan is like a mermaid version or an aquatic version of the Neopet, and baby is an immature version, like an adolescent version of the Neopet, so it doesn't make sense for them to adhere to that standard line art. But as I've been flashing the line art, you've probably noticed that the newer art reflects less character and personality than the earlier art. Like, let's take the royal girl Aisha, for example. The old art has more dignity, has more character, has more personality than the standardized line art that came out after customization. The Neopets team recognized that there would be backlash if they took away that old line art across the entire website. So they decided that they would look through all of the combinations of colors and species, and they came up with 220 combinations that they would not convert to the line art in the new dress-up style in April 2007 when they released the new dress-up feature. These pets are now referred to as unconverted pets because instead of being converted with the rest of the website to the new line art, they preserved their old line art. So if in April of 2007, your Neopet was one of these 220 something combinations, they did not automatically turn into the new line art. So if you had a red Aisha in April 2007, you had no choice. That red Aisha was migrated, was converted to the new line art. But if you had a royal girl Aisha, your art remained unconverted, and the option was presented to you that you could either convert the art or not. There is one Neopets staff member who is ultimately responsible for this decision, and their name is Snarky. That is their pseudonym. And Snarky worked at Neopets from like 2004 to 2012 and started as a programmer, a developer, and ultimately became the creative director of Neopets.com. Snarky has a blog with a search function on it, and she answers questions that have to do with Neopets. I recommend reading it. She said that it was a long process and it was very contentious because she ultimately didn't want there to be any unconverted pets because it would be confusing to new users. And the idea with keeping the cap so low to 220 something Neopets designs that would be unconverted, that eventually they would filter out. Eventually they would go extinct. Neopets are only active as long as the users are active. And when user accounts go inactive, right, somebody goes to college, they stop logging into Neopets, they don't log in for 4 years, their account gets purged and all of their pets get purged. So the idea was that over time, all of these unconverted Neopets would just go extinct. They just wouldn't exist anymore because there's no new way to make them. You cannot make an unconverted art Neopet after April 2007. The only way to have an unconverted Neopet was to have that color in that pet and color combination before April 2007. The whole concept that these unconverted Neopets would go extinct over time because they would stay on their accounts and get purged relies on the Neopets staying on their original accounts, the accounts that they were on in April 2007, which simply isn't how it's worked out. If you go on Neopets today, you'll see that unconverted Neopets are very well still in circulation. And that's because of something called pet trading. On Neopets.com, there is an active economy where users trade pets. And because unconverted Neopets have a distinct style that's easily recognizable and they're in limited supply, they are highly coveted and seen as very rare and desirable to trade for. The place where these trades most often occur is called the PC, which just is the pound chat, the Neopets pound chat. This community is seen as toxic by the larger Neopets community. I particularly do not like to go on the pound chat, and just between us girlfriends, I have a lot of bad blood with the pound community and the pound chat community and Neopets trading in general. The UC trade relies on the circulation of unconverted Neopets. And if you follow the logic that there are only unconverted Neopets in circulation that were created before April 2007, and most people will not play Neopets their entire life, these pets are likely not entering the trading ecosystem legally. There should be a limited supply that has run out by now. There should not be so many users willing to trade their unconverted Neopets. Everybody I know in real life that has unconverted Neopets is bonded to those Neopets and will not trade them because they love them, because of how much work they represent from their childhood. According to my logic and understanding, if a new unconverted Neopet enters the trade economy, most likely they are being entered against the user's will. They are from hacked accounts. This happened to me. I lost an unconverted Neopet via hacking. And this was back in 2009? And there was no recourse to really get that pet back. And so that account is gone. The new user, I think, is inactive, and they refused to trade it back to me. It was an unconverted MSB Poogle. It is just like, to me, it's like unfathomable that somebody could participate in the UC trade in 2021 and think that the pets that are being traded are 100% legal. I cannot understand the mental gymnastics that it takes to believe that. It's like willful ignorance, because there is not an inventory of pets large enough among the active populace that has been active since 2007. The amount of users that have left the website, that have lapsed, doesn't support this narrative. It's just basic logic to me. So I personally do not agree with the ethics of the pound chat or the trading of unconverted Neopets, because just from an inventory analysis of how many UC pets there are, it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And there is an active black market housed off-site, so not on neopets.com, but if you Google search purchase unconverted Neopets, you could buy one for under $200. Because Neopets has had multiple security breaches over the years. During these multiple security breaches over the years, usernames and password combinations have been leaked and sold and exchanged across hackers in the Neopets larger world off-site. So if there was an account that had a UC pet, somebody could buy the username and password combination, get on the account, and then sell the pet, entering it into the trading ecosystem, which is the only way that the trading ecosystem could still be running in 2021. The inventory would have run out by now. It doesn't make sense. I do believe that there are pets legally in the trading ecosystem. I believe that. I also believe that the trading ecosystem would not work without these illegally traded pets. So you can purchase unconverted Neopets. Or you could go to the PC chat, which has a very active user base, which is very toxic. There's this phrase that's NTYGLT, no thank you, good luck trading, or good luck though, which is synonymous with the pound chat, because people will just post that string of 7 characters, NTY space GLT, in response to threads, and that's like their own contribution. That's all they'll say. Because when you have a UC pet to trade with, they are so valuable that there is a surplus of users trying to break into owning a UC. Unconverted Neopets, UCs, aren't all equally valued. because there are different species of Neopets that are more rare than others, and then there are colors that are more rare than other colors, and then there are species and color combinations that are more rare than others. And then on top of that, each individual Neopet can be trained, their stats can have their stats trained and become stronger. And that is something that's very worthwhile and costs a lot on Neopets because you have to grind to do it. So you've got the species and color combination, then you have the stats, and then you have the naming convention. On Neopets, everything is bound to user or pet name. There are no ID numbers like modern games use. Instead, everything is tethered to the pet name or the username. So for a pet, you cannot have that pet name changed legally through any on-site support. The Neopets team won't do it for you. If your pet is made with a name, it'll always have that name. And there can only be one Neopet with a name at a time. So shorter, more concise, proper case capitalized names or real words are more coveted than strings of letters and numbers with underscores and random capitalizations. So not all UCs are valued the same. And not all pet and species and color combinations are valued the same. The trading economy is active and UC pets are being traded in 2021. But the process to break into it is very hard, right? You have to have a well-named pet, a well-leveled, stat-wise pet in order to break into it. So people will trade for years, and there will be very long chains, right? They'll trade pet A for pet B, then pet B for pet C, and this will go on for years with dozens of users involved in the trading of a pet. I bring this up because in 2020, the Neopets team started cracking down on the presence of illegal pets entering trading chains. So if you had a trading chain 20 pets deep and there was one illegally traded pet, came from the black market, from a hacked account, was entered into it, and the user realized it, and so they placed a ticket to get their hacked pet back, the entire trade chain would get reversed. And this was wildly unpopular and made waves outside of Neopets. Polygon actually did an article on it. This had huge backlash from the Neopets community because people didn't know that these pets were illegally in the trading economy. How would they know that this unconverted Neopet was not being traded willfully by its original owner and instead came from a hacked account? How would they know? Plausible deniability. They didn't know. They don't see the records. There's no trading records of where this pet came from or statements of I willfully give this Neopet. So the Neopets team had to make it right. They had to make it good with the users who were stolen from. And the solution that they came up with was they started creating new unconverted Neopets in some instances. They would tell the users, hey, go to the pound, get a Neopet, and we'll make it into the unconverted pet and color combination of your choosing. This was also pretty unpopular because for 12 years, this wasn't an option. For over a decade, there was no way to get a new unconverted Neopet, and it was against the policy of the Neopets team to make one for anyone. And now all of a sudden, as a result of the black market that arose because of the Neopets team inability to keep user data private, there's suddenly recourse. And people are upset about this, but it's only in the extreme situations where there's an unconverted pet trading chain gone wrong. Until March 12th, 2021, we finally get to the main event. A user posted on the Pound Chat saying that they could make an unconverted Neopet. They didn't need to be logged into an admin account or anything to do this, because there was just a link that was being traded on the black market where users, anyone with access to the link, can unconvert a Neopet. And apparently, this has been circulated in the black market for quite some time, according to the user who eventually posted about it on Reddit. They had apparently flagged it to the Neopets team using the ticket system, and the Neopets team hadn't responded. So they decided that it was time to escalate it, take the power into their own hands, make the PC chat thread claiming that they could do it, and then proving that they could do it. The Neopets fan community absolutely exploded. So this was a Friday night. I was just chilling with my boo thing, making din or something or another, boring stuff. And all of a sudden, like I see on Reddit and on Twitter, the Neoverse is just exploding about this because it is bananas to consider that new unconverted Neopets can be made, especially when you take into consideration circumstances like mine where my pet was hacked back in 2009 and there was no way to get this fixed. It was just common knowledge that the Neopets team was not going to help you in this circumstance. And that was the stance for a decade, you know. And in that time, how many pets were hacked and the users were told, tough luck. And now, all of a sudden, it turns out that the Neopets team always had the power to create new unconverted Neopets. They just weren't doing it. All the while, black market raged on. This was a pretty big deal. This was like huge news. And the Neopets team like immediately shut down the forum. Like as soon as they saw it, they shut down that thread and all the subsequent threads discussing it. But Reddit and the Discord and all kinds of other places for Neopets users to assemble are active offsite outside of their purview, and news spread pretty quickly. The user who revealed this exploit also shared a very long list of Neopets that they claimed were illegally unconverted. And by illegally, I mean not unconverted because they were that art and that species and that color in 2007, but because black market traders had used the exploited link to make them the colors and species that had the unconverted line art in 2021 or earlier, that they used the exploit to render the Neopets unconverted. The Neopets team responded and they said that they were going to address the situation and anyone who was found to abuse the exploited link would be banned and those pets would be reversed. Several high-profile Neopets users were banned as a result of this. But then, probably the most dramatic thing that could result from this is the Neopets team stating that they would like to implement a method for unconverted Neopets to be legally created again. That they have the intentions to release a method to create unconverted Neopets. And that if you are a Neopets user, to stay tuned to get that news sometime this year. This is arguably the biggest news that this YouTube channel has ever heard about Neopets.com. Right? There was Jumpstart acquiring Neopets from Viacom, right? This is bigger than that. This is the biggest news ever because since 2007, this has been the thing that I have personally wanted the most and have seen record of users on Neopets wanting the most. There is backlash from some UC traders who don't want to see the value of their pets diminish. I don't really think that pets should be valued by that line art. I don't really see that as something that should be factored into the conversation. What I think should be factored into the conversation. So the NC Mall, Neo Cash Mall, which is that paid currency that you have to purchase in order to buy the clothing, is the foundation of how Neopets.com makes money in 2021. There's Neopets Premium, which is an ad-free experience that gives you some gameplay advantages. And then there's the NC Mall. Those are like the basic ways that Neopets.com makes money. Unconverted Neopets cannot be fully dressed up using clothing from the NC Mall. So the Neopets team has to evaluate how much money the average user is worth in terms of NC Mall purchases, and then compare that to how much a user would be willing to spend to get a UC, or how much money could be earned from a user who has renewed interest in Neopets.com because they have a UC, and then offset the experience of getting a UC with that value assessment, right? Because the Neopets team has to somehow still make enough money to keep the lights on. Ultimately, I don't think that it should be a paid element. I don't think it should be accessible through premium, and I don't think that it should be accessible through the NC mall. I don't think that they should, the UC pets, the new UCs as people are calling them, I don't think that they should be accessible with an item through premium or the NC mall. I think that goes against the values and missions of Neopets.com. I think it should be accessible through an on-site feature that's only accessible through gameplay. And if your account has to be a certain age to do it, or your pet has to be a certain level and stats to do it, I think those would be great gates to keep. But I don't think that paid is a good gate to keep. And I think it should be something that is pet bound, not account bound, in order to continue the pet trading value. Some people have said that they would like to see trophies on the original UC Pets page to show that they are original UCs. But once again, I really don't care for that. I don't see any value in doing that, except for appeasing a minority of the site who were participating in a system that they could only really justify with willful ignorance. Like, I don't see why we should really be rewarding the people who have been keeping the UC trade alive when it was so fraught with unethical actors. That's my take. Like, as a person who was negatively affected by the UC trade, I don't really care what people in the UC trade argue for. But that's incredibly unpopular. And you know what? If you hate that stance, please write many comments about it on this video. Like, please go to the YouTube page for this video if it's embedded somewhere and leave many comments about it, because that'll teach me, but also because I'm interested in hearing your feedback. As of the end of March 2021, the Neopets team still hasn't announced the method that they're going to release these new UCs with. And if there's a method that you particularly like that you think the Neopets team should do, go ahead and describe it in a comment below. I'd love to hear your ideas for how this should be implemented or considerations that you think are important for this process. Meanwhile, I just hit 12,000 subscribers, hey, and a user, I believe their name was Les. Les recommended that I do a Q&A to celebrate. So if you have a question for me, a general question, go ahead and leave it as a comment below, and I'll get around to making a video sometime in the near future going through and answering. Also, I do have a Redbubble where I have posted the art that I was working on in this video. So if you like that, go ahead and follow the link. This is a major way that I'm trying to put myself through grad school. So eventually I would like to put together a calendar of my illustrations and sell that. But until then, I am just kind of making it up as I go along. I appreciate any and all support. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you watching this longer video, and I will see you next time.